Slovenian Forestry School is based first on phytocenological knowledge and the writings of the first phytocenologist in Slovenia, Dr. Max Vraber from the Slovenian Forestry Institute in the 50s. It was later on his wording that silviculture is based on forest genetics. It was later on implemented into practice by Dr. Miran Briner, one of the directors of our institute, and the whole principles of Slovenian Forestry School was written down by Professor Dušan Mlinšek as multifunctional, sustainable, co-natural forest management. So the main purpose of a forest reserve is strict nature conservation and research. The research function is an important part of interaction with forest reserves, and our institute has started studies already in the 50s, 60s. Then around the turn of the millennium, we were included in a European project called NETMAN, studying biodiversity at different levels, from coarse woody debris to their role for supporting biodiversity of ground vegetation, mosses and fungi. And then later on, we have included this forest reserve into studies of genetic diversity of beech and the possibilities for conservation of the adaptability potential of future forests through supporting genetic diversity of future generation of forests, which allow this forest to adapt to the changes in the environment and the changing climates.
Well, hello. We are in the middle of nowhere in a really, really huge forest at Kočevsko region. This is the southern part of Slovenia, and we have more than 90% of forest here. I'm Tomaž Hartman from Slovenia Forest Service, Regional Unit Kočevje, and today we are going to visit virgin forest, which is completely untouched forest, a small remnant, but very precious. It is a natural heritage, and especially for foresters, a scientific workshop for studies about natural development. This is a symbolic entrance to the forest without man, without forester, because we circled virgin forest with a huge new forest reserve to have this protective zone. Kočevsko is covered with more than 90% of forest due to a very special history. We are at the karst area, a lot of rocks, no water on surface. It was completely unsuitable for any kind of agriculture, and it was unsettled till 14th century. And then they brought German peasants here. They established several villages, but they left the central parts of Dinaric mountains completely covered with forests, because rocky terrain and no water on surface, it's suitable only for the forest. Later they moved out, and all the villages were destroyed here, so now we are facing 90% of forest. But not only the vast forest area, the most naturally preserved forest, not only in this area but connecting with Croatia also. I can say that it is one of the biggest forested area in Middle Europe and the most naturally preserved forest. Now, virgin forest itself is a precious natural heritage, so we are no longer entering virgin forest, but we have a very special footpath leading all along on the edge of the virgin forest, and we have a special marcation, brown bear footprint, because brown bear is also present here. Now we are at the Roška footpath, which is leading all along the edge of the virgin forest, and this footpath is marked with a bear footprint. Brown bear is a symbol of Kočevsko, but we have also a wolf and lynx in those forests, and there is a funny story about this markation. It was marked in red, and people are phoning us, is it dangerous to enter the virgin forest? It is prohibited, and now we choose green color. It means, come on. Well, here we are at the very edge of the virgin forest. We will not enter it because we are respecting primeval nature. That's why we have a huge border zone, a new forest reserve, when you can enter it and see the virgin forest, not really disturbing primeval nature. Those forests are among the most naturally preserved forests, and you can imagine that 1,000 years ago there was a virgin forest all over those mountains, and when they start cutting, there was a forester, a young chap with a very strange idea. He noticed that clear cuts can cause a lot of problems at such karst forest, so he tried to obey seemingly very simple rules, that forests should cover this rocky terrain all the time, that tree species which are at home here should be naturally regenerating, and he completely forbidden clear cuts. And even more, he established this as a selective management. And that's why the idea is still here, and that's why we have this huge forest so naturally preserved. And it was more than 100 years ago in the first forestry plan, and clearly there was a remark for some forest departments that they should preserved, they should stay completely untouched as a virgin forest. And I can say that it was a kind of birthday of nature conservation in Slovenia more than 100 years ago. And that's why we have some virgin forest remnants, which are in the first place a natural heritage. But on the other side, we try to understand natural processes. We try to know how a forest which is there for thousands of years is still so vital, and we try to mimic those processes, managing other forests in that manner. Due to this forester, Dr. Leopold Hufnagel, those forests are so vital, still preserved, and this idea of selective management also influenced the broader area, also in Slovenia and on Croatia side. Regarding virgin forest, the definition is quite clear, no human influence at all. Well, I can say that there was no cutting, this is for sure. And we have data for 100 years ago. We can say that there is a growing stock of almost 1,000 cubic meters per hectare. It is for the 3 times more than in other forests, and there is a third of this biomass is so-called in decaying stage, preserving, keeping a lot of water alive. It is a rich table for microorganisms, etc., etc. So development phases, we notice that optimal phase is always prevailing, and this is these huge vital trees which are like a thick skin of a life, and there is regeneration only in small gaps, but only it is successful only with beech. Well, we have some problems with, especially with natural regeneration, because of too much red deer. The forest is not successful, so we are thinking about the fence all around the virgin forest, but it is unnatural. Now we are facing a huge change. The beech will completely prevail, and we notice that those cycles during the millennia is quite clear. But on the other side, the system is based on only fir and beech. So regarding tree species, it's not a very rich system, but fir and beech seems to be a very successful pair. A few years ago, there was a genetic analysis of European beech, and it is very clear that the trees survived ice ages in this part of Dinaric Mountains. It was 12,000 years ago, and you can imagine that from this forest, beeches spread all over the Europe. We have also an ice age refugee in these Dinaric Mountains.
The main function of forest reserves is just research. No other intervention is allowed. And we have used at the Slovenian Forestry Institute, together with the Slovenia Forest Service, this virgin forest reserve in a series of projects already. First, around 20 years ago, within an EU project Netman, we were studying nutrient and water cycles, biodiversity after natural gap openings, and also the role of coarse woody debris for biodiversity of vegetation, mosses and fungi. We have studied mainly beech, big beech logs. First, we have established that their decay time is might be around 50 years. Then we studied the water retention and so on through the 6 decay phases. However, later on, about 12-15 years after this first initial study, we came back to study fine root and fungi and so on, and already decay phase of beech, coarse woody debris of decay phases 1 to 3, they have already reached decay phases 4 to 6. Obviously, the time scale of the decomposition of this coarse woody debris was not calculated appropriately at the beginning. Or maybe the other possibility was the decomposition was accelerated in these 12 years. So we have re-entered again, and at present we are still studying the fungal and bacterial composition of the decaying wood. Next, what we established was that the coarse woody debris provided best sources of nutrient and humidity in these forests, so that Rajhenavski Rock Forest Reserve was found to be among the most biodiversity-rich forests in Europe regarding mosses and as well as fungi, compared to some virgin forests in Hungary, Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark. We also studied the succession of fungi in the gap openings, and later on we also used this virgin forest reserve as a background site for analysis of genetic diversity of beech trees, of the adult and of the young regenerating beech trees in the forest. Comparing it to the managed forest in another region of Slovenia, the genetic diversity of the adult trees was similar, and also the genetic diversity of the young trees was found to be similar, which proved that the irregular shelterwood management system, which is one of the bases of the Slovenian Forestry School, has indeed copied the processes in the Virgin Forest Reserve well. At present, we still keep on studying genetic diversity of adult and young trees in this Virgin Forest Reserve, trying to establish the landscape genetic diversity. So how does the genetic diversity of the adult trees reflects in the next generation. Within this Virgin Forest Reserve, we started with an European project from the 5th framework, NETMAN, continued through a series of national research projects, used it as a background for the LIFE project, LIFE-GenMon, where we are developing the system for forest genetic monitoring, and at present we have included this site also as a background site into the new project LIFE Systemic, which is aiming to prepare forest management strategies for different European forest types, and in Slovenia, Italy,